Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Live with Renk show, second hour. Do appreciate you tuning in. In the beginning of this hour, I'm going to be interviewing David Niose. He's the legal director of the American Humanist Association concerning some issues that have come up in the last few weeks that I have seen and talked about. And I wanted to get their perspective, ask them a few questions. Maybe we can understand it a little bit better. The American Humanist Association say that we strive to bring a progressive society where being good without a God is an accepted and respected way to live life. We are accomplishing this through our defense of civil liberties and secular governance, by our outreach to the growing number of people without traditional religious faith, and through a continued refinement and advancement of the humanist worldview. As I said at the end of the last hour, their mission, according to their website, is to advance humanism, an ethical and life-affirming philosophy free of belief in any gods and other supernatural forces, which is fine. It's America. You can still do what you want. Advocating for equality for non-theists in a society guided by reason, empathy, and our growing knowledge of the world. The AHA promotes a worldview that encourages individuals to live informed and meaningful lives that aspire to a greater good. Well, that's a good thing. You know, most religions look to do that. So thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on, David Niose, the legal director of the American Humanist Association. Did you want to add anything to that before we get into the meat of the discussion?
No, I think that pretty much summarizes the AHA's mission.
All right, I appreciate that. Now, yesterday, I first learned of you a few weeks back, on another issue that we can get into, and that's the concern that you had with a Florida student, say, God bless America, on the PA system. But yesterday I saw a report in the Daily Caller that said in fact, they quoted you. And it said this: the American Humanist Association sent a letter to a newly elected members of Congress imploring them not to join the Congressional Prayer Caucus, saying the caucus is a threat to the U.S. Constitution and American rights. Quote, generally speaking, prayer caucuses are unnecessary and a threat to the wall of separation of church and state, end quote, said you, David. Do you want to expand on that? And the question I have regarding that is, how is this caucus a threat to the U.S. Constitution and American rights?
Well, I would invite people to take a look at the caucus's record, and you can quickly see what we're talking about there. The caucus, the Congressional Prayer Caucus, is essentially really a platform for Christian right politicians to pander to their central audience. The CPC has come out in favor of removing federal court jurisdiction from Establishment Clause cases. They essentially are trying to declaw civil rights legislation.
Wait, before you go further, what do you mean? Which civil rights are they trying to declaw?
They are, as I said, they are removing, or if they had their way, they would remove Establishment Clause cases from federal court jurisdiction.
Can you expound on that, Establishment Clause?
Yes. If you had a complaint about church-state separation, you would not be allowed to bring the lawsuit in federal court. They have the power, Congress has the power to determine the jurisdiction of federal courts. And, of course, it's always assumed that any issue that arises under the Constitution of the United States should be litigated in federal court. That's what federal courts are for, right? Well, if the Congressional Prayer Caucus had its way, the people in the Congressional Prayer Caucus really don't like the Establishment Clause. They don't like the idea of church-state separation. They don't like the idea of having to defend in court their agenda of promoting religion in government. So what do? Instead of defending it in court, what they would like to do is remove the entire issue from the jurisdiction of federal courts so that the lawsuits can't be brought. This is how militant the agenda of the Congressional Prayer Caucus is. And as we say in the article that you're quoting, there really is no need for a Congressional Prayer Caucus. It really is a caucus that panders to an audience. It's not that there are no real important issues having to do with prayer.
Well, doesn't
elevate the issue to needing a caucus?
Well, David, doesn't any caucus pander? Aren't you pandering, your group, pandering to a certain group of people? That's every group. It panders.
Well, politicians are not supposed to emphasize that there's a segment of the population that's being persecuted that isn't being persecuted. Obviously, if there are issues of importance, we can set up caucuses to discuss them. But what we are saying at the American Humanist Association is that the idea that prayer needs a caucus in Congress is really kind of ridiculous. Look at all the important issues facing this country. Yet we have almost 25% of the House of Representatives signing up to be members of a prayer caucus. There are much more important issues on the American agenda.
But
it's pretty obvious what's happening here.
David, a congressional caucus is nothing more than a group of like-minded members organizing around a common interest or set of interest, and you want to stop that.
We are suggesting...
And again, when I say you, I mean your group.
Right. We are suggesting that legislators should avoid this caucus because it's much more toxic than it appears on the surface. That's what we are doing. Obviously, they have a right to set up a caucus, but what we are saying as advocates for the people who stand opposed to the agenda of this caucus, we want to shine a bright light on this caucus and show what it is. It's not some innocent group that simply wants to be patriotic and religious, that sort of thing. It is a group with a very hard right, Christian right agenda that is intent on attacking the Constitution to get its way.
But they would say that about you, your group. You're a group that is not what you portray yourself to be. You're a hard left progressive, as you say, group that is trying to force their positions on America.
They can characterize us any way we want, but we certainly are not trying to force our positions on anyone. We are what we are. The Congressional Prayer Caucus is not really what it appears on the surface, although, quite frankly, on the surface, the idea that America needs its legislators to belong to a prayer caucus is kind of outlandish, but it's even more invidious than it appears on the surface.
All right.
The American Humanist Association is not suggesting anywhere that we remove entire constitutional issues from the purview of federal courts. The Congressional Prayer Caucus is.
So that's why you say that a threat to the U.S. Constitution, American rights on the Establishment Clause. Please point to me where in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights does it say wall of separation of church and state. I could not find that.
That's an old argument.
It may be an old argument, but it's a hard question to answer, isn't it?
No, it's really not.
Okay, point to it.
The very first words of the First Amendment are that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. And that wording from the very beginning has been understood to, from Thomas Jefferson in his letter to the Danbury Baptists during his administration, explained that the concept of a wall of separation is what's intended by that wording.
The wording had to do with them being concerned, like in England where they came from, that the state doesn't set up its own approved religion. Nothing to do with religion and people practicing their own freedom of religion here, because what quite often happens is people forget about the second part of what you just said, and it's quite interesting that you stopped at where you said, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So are you not, your group not, prohibiting the free exercise thereof?
No, these legislators are free to go to church on Sunday or any day, every day of the week if they want. But to bring religion into government and to make government an arm of promoting your religion is exactly what is intended to be addressed by the Establishment Clause.
But how are they intending to make it an arm of government? They're just, just the whole point is you base yourself. Okay, Dave. By the way, my guest is. Pardon me.
I said, let me give you an example, okay?
I will, but let me get my point out here. By the way, my guest is David Niose. He's the legal director of the American Humanist Association. And my point being that you're concerned about the establishment cause, right? And you said that's what the threat is. But your whole basis of that is that it's in the Constitution, and it is not. Well, it may be in a letter written by Thomas Jefferson.
The Establishment Clause is not in the Constitution, Renk.
No. No, the wall of separation of church and state is not in the Constitution. And that's what you're basing your point on this establishment call. And a letter by Thomas Jefferson is not law, and it's not Constitution. It's not the Bill of Rights.
No, but the Establishment Clause is in the Constitution. The idea that religion and government should generally be kept separate is what the Establishment Clause is all about. That's really what we're talking about here. An example of just how aggressive the Congressional Prayer Caucus is. At one point in time, a few years ago, President Obama made a speech, and he just offhandedly said, we have a motto in this country called E Pluribus Unum. And, of course, E Pluribus Unum was the motto of the country established by the founders back in the 18th century. It stands for out of many, one. That's what it stands for. And he was making a point about pluralism in this speech. After he made that speech, the Congressional Prayer Caucus sent out a letter to him scolding him for suggesting that we have a motto called E Pluribus Unum and insisting that the motto of this country is in God we trust and not to refer to E Pluribus Unum, the motto of the founders, as a motto that this country has. That's how insistent they are in keeping God front and center in everything that America does. That even if you refer to E Pluribus Unum as a motto that this country has, you're going to get scolded by this group. This is a militant, aggressive group that Americans need to know about.
But, okay, you could keep saying that, but the people think your group and the Freedom from Religion is a militant group. I mean, we can call each other names, and that's not the reason for this. The reason for I wanted to discuss this with you is, and it sounds to me like you cannot point to me in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights where it talks about a wall of separation of church and state.
No, but I can point to you to decades and centuries of precedent, Supreme Court precedent, which interprets the Establishment Clause as meaning that religion and government should generally be kept separate. And that's what we're talking about. If you want to harp all over the words wall of separation, we can stipulate that the words wall of separation are not in the Constitution, but that's the metaphor that is used to refer to the idea of keeping religion and government separate. Do you disagree?
I disagree. I disagree with you, Dave.
Do you disagree with the idea that, generally speaking, religion and government should be kept separate?
It depends what you mean by that. And let me go back to what you said first, and then you can expound on that. You said, well, if you want to harp on those words, I mean, I assume you're a lawyer. Is that a correct assumption? Okay. So don't words matter in a law? When you point to a law, words matter. So words matter when we all know that the reason that was put in there is because of the Church of England. Period. They did not want, and I would be in agreement with you, David. By the way, my guest is David Niose, the legal director of the American Humanist Association. I would be in agreement with you that I do not want the United States government pushing a Catholic religion, pushing Islam, pushing Buddhism, pushing the Jewish religion. None of that. I would agree with you on that. But I don't think, because it doesn't say anywhere in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, and sorry if I hang my hat on that, but I am, that it says that we should, that a child can't say God bless America in school, or the AHA or some other group will come after them, making them look like the militant group.
What's misunderstood there is that the AHA has no problem with a child saying God bless America in school. What we have a problem with is the school saying God bless America, because the school is the government. And in that particular case that you're talking about, there was a child speaking on behalf of the school, making morning announcements for the school. And that's what was misunderstood with that particular controversy.
No, I'll get into that in the next segment. I got to go to a quick break. Thanks, Dave. David Niose, legal director of the American Humanist Association, is on air with me, and I appreciate that very much, trying to get their perspective on where in the Constitution or where in law does it say that there cannot be any discussion about religion in government. We agree that the government can establish a religion. And again, that's exactly what the First Amendment says. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibit the free exercise thereof. So we'll get into that discussion a little bit more and bring up the details concerning the Florida issue, high school issue, and get David's thoughts on that. You're listening to Live with Renk. We'll be right back after this.
Talk in everlasting words and dedicate them all to me. You think that I don't even mean a single word I say. It's only words, and words are all I have.
You're listening to Live with Renk, and I appreciate that. My guest on air is David Niose, the legal director of the American Humanist Association, and we're talking about the big question I've been asking for a while in reporting on these things is where in the Constitution does the, where did I put it? Wall of separation of church and state. Where does it say that? It doesn't say it anywhere. I think David stipulated with me that that's true, but he pointed to the Establishment Clause. Well, Cornell University Law School, the First Amendment's Establishment Clause prohibits the government from making any law respecting an establishment of religion. I think we all agree on that. This clause not only forbids the government from establishing an official religion, we all agree on that, but also prohibits government's actions that unduly favor one religion over another. Okay? If someone says God bless you in a school on a PA, that doesn't favor one religion over another. There's different religions that believe in God. It also prohibits the government from unduly preferring religion over non-religion or non-religion over religion. Thanks a lot for holding on, Dave. I appreciate that very much. You there, Dave? Oh, wait. Dave, you there? Now you're there.
Yes, do you hear me?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. It was my fault. Real quickly, I just read to you what at least Cornell University Law School said about the Establishment Clause. You have mentioned Thomas Jefferson's letter. So let me talk to people about that. In 1802, Thomas Jefferson and the Baptists were anti-federalists who supported states' rights and a limited centralized government. By the way, I received a phone call during the break that said that the 10th Amendment does say that states can establish, or the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectfully or to the people. He wanted to point that out to all of us. And again, back to this, that letter that you spoke of that Thomas Jefferson wrote. Thomas Jefferson and James Madison were instrumental in the passage of Virginia's Declaration of Rights in 1776 and the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom in 1786. Both influenced the framing and ratification of the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights in 1791, the impetus for the Establishment Clause, which partly due to the Virginia statutes, which de-established the Church of England in Virginia, guaranteed freedom of religion to people of all faiths and spurred other states to reverse laws that had implemented religious requirements. During this time, the Baptist' primary concern was if the government granted rights to freely express religious beliefs, it could also regulate or eliminate these rights. Jefferson shared their concern, which is why he referred to, quote, natural rights, end quote, in his letter. This phrase was widely understood as a God-given and inherently inalienable right that no government could justly supersede. Did I explain that correctly? Or would you like to add to that, David?
Well, you said quite a bit, really.
I did.
You went on, but the main point that I would go back to is your reference to government not being allowed to favor religion over non-religion. So the idea of government promoting the idea of God belief would certainly be favoring religion over non-religion. And it would, in fact, be favoring one type of religion over another, because there are religions that don't believe in God. So it both favors one religion over another and religion over non-religion. In this day and age, it seems to just make sense to keep government out of the God business.
The Florida issue we spoke about, as being reported by Todd Starnes from Fox News, a Florida high school student was disciplined after a national atheist organization took offense when he concluded the morning announcements by saying, "God bless America." And in that, the letter, it said, quote, "It is inappropriate and unlawful for a public school to start the school day with an official statement over the intercom stating, 'God bless America.' For such a statement affirms God belief, validates a theistic worldview, and is invidious towards atheists and other non-believers," is what you wrote. So I guess my question is, how did that student violate the Constitution and break the law?
Because that student was speaking not for himself, but for the school, and the school is the government, okay? The idea that schools can start the day every day by promoting the idea of God belief, and that, not only God belief, but patriotism and God belief is invidious towards non-believers. It certainly defines patriotism in a way that excludes a certain group of students who are good, decent students coming from tax-paying families. Now, nobody is objecting to the idea of students being able to say "God bless America" on their own time, in their own place. But
in
when
school,
you were
in
speaking
school,
over
can they?
The microphone. You asked me a question. I
No,
want to
no,
answer.
no. Well,
when you were speaking over the intercom on behalf of the school, that's not a free speech zone, unless you want to say that an atheist student can say the announcements and end the announcements with his own atheistic statement, which I'm sure you wouldn't want.
Which would be what? No, honestly, I wouldn't care, because I'm not afraid of other people's ideas. I'm not afraid. I don't think that if an atheist said something to me, it will bring down my walls of life, and then I'm going to convert. Or vice versa. And a question I would have is, why do these atheist groups, and I know you can only speak for yours, the American Humanist Association, is why are your group so concerned that if people hear the word God, it will scare them and it will break down their thought process and possibly look at the idea of finding out what this God's about?
No, that's not what it's about at all. What it is the idea that government is going to take a position on a theological idea that is invidious towards our group. The idea that government can condition kids every day that, God bless America, therefore, in these kids' minds, associate God belief with patriotism, associate non-believers as being unpatriotic. That's invidious.
Do you believe
It's
these kids are
right.
that weak-minded that they would do that? Do you believe people who are atheists are that weak-minded, David, that they would think that God bless America is questioning their patriotism?
It certainly does question the patriotism of non-believers. It certainly does. That to associate God belief with patriotism is to suggest, in fact, that's when most of this God language came into the American vernacular, is during the Cold War, when atheism was associated with the enemy. And that's part of the problem here. almost all the God belief that you see in government today, under God in the pledge, in God we trust as the national motto, the National Day of Prayer, the National Prayer Breakfast, these all came into the American vernacular during the 1950s, during the McCarthy era in the Cold War, when religious groups saw an opportunity to advance their agenda by portraying God belief as patriotic and opposed to the Soviet Union. Do you know who the first
I have to go to a
president
quick break.
was
We'll
to
come
use
back.
the
I got to go to a quick break. I'm sorry. We'll come back on the other side, David, and continue our conversation. Thanks a lot for holding on. You're listening to Live with Renk. We'll be right back after this.
Sometimes I'm right, but I can be wrong. My own beliefs are in my song. Picture a banker, a drummer, and then makes no difference what group I'm in. I am everyday people. Yeah.
You're listening to Live with Renk, showing online with me for this last few minutes is David Niose. He's the legal director of the American Humanist Association. And we're talking to him about some of the concerns they have, this group, on having religion, or someone say God bless America in over the PA at a high school, or someone who joins a prayer caucus, as they have a concern with as an elected official of the United States. He mentioned Thomas Jefferson's letter, which, again, is not law. It's a letter. Jefferson made a poignant remark in Notes on the State of Virginia, which clarifies his thinking, quote, "And can the liberties of a nation be thought secure if we have lost the only firm basis, a conviction in the minds of the people that these liberties are the gift of God? They are not to be violated, but with his wrath." Now, that goes to the point, and the reason I brought that up, David, is because you kept saying about how religion, or these words of religion, came up during the Cold War, which I would disagree with you. And I know we only have a few minutes left. I have a quick question. Your letter to the school on the high school student, your group wrote, quote, "The daily validation of the religious views of God believers resigns atheists to second-class citizens," end quote. My question to you is, how does someone saying God bless America resign atheists to second-class citizens?
Well, in a school context, especially if it's said on a daily basis at the start of school, you are certainly conditioning children to associate God belief with patriotism. I would point out that the term God bless America, people seem to think it's like quintessentially American, that it goes back to the founding or something like that. Actually, do you know who the first president was to end a speech with God bless America?
No.
It was Richard Nixon. And it was during the Watergate investigation when he went on national TV and was trying to deflect attention from the scandal, and he ended his speech with God bless America. So you see, it doesn't go back to the founding or to Lincoln or anything like that.
Yes, the words God bless America doesn't go back to the founding, David, but in the founding, the founding fathers were very religious, and religion was part of it. It's just they wanted to say you can't separate church. I mean, you must separate church. Not
well,
separate
Renk, it's somewhat debatable, okay? The Constitution, which is the foundational law of this nation,
right,
is godless. There's no reference to God in the United States Constitution.
And there's no reference to separation of law of church and state. So, that's what I'm saying. There's no reference to that. Just as you're saying, there's no reference to the other thing. Now, I know we only have a couple of minutes. You need to get going. I do appreciate you spending some time with us here. One last question, because the number one question I got from listeners emailing me was this, and I want you to be able to explain your thoughts on this. Why do you believe you have to impose your rights on the belief of others? How fair is that to others? And your rights being that there shouldn't be any discussion of religion.
No.
In a public setting.
Yes. If I was imposing my beliefs on everyone, I would not be asking for religious neutrality from the government, which is what I'm asking for. I would be asking for the government to advocate for atheism and humanism. That's not what I'm asking for. Okay, religious neutrality, asking the government not to say, God bless America, to kids every morning to condition them, or asking government not to mix religion and government is that's neutrality. It's not advocacy for my view. If I was asking the government to declare every morning, "Good morning, children," in "America is godless," that would be advocating for my position. But that's not what I'm asking for.
Okay, now how about this? Would you consider atheists subject to the same criteria and law as other religious groups?
Generally speaking, yes. It's a complicated question. But yes, generally speaking, atheists have the same rights as everyone else under the Constitution.
Okay, so then isn't it
generally speaking, just as a blanket statement,
I understand.
we can say that.
So say then, is it your belief that the system getting so isn't your belief system getting special treatment by government by eliminating all references other than belief systems of others?
No, because if references advocated for atheism, government would be advocating for me. By government being silent on the God question, it's not advocating for atheism. It's staying out of the issue.
Okay, I appreciate you calling in. I want to stick to the time I told you I'd be off. Thank you very much, David Niose, for coming on air.
Hey, thanks for having me. Take care.
Have a great day. That was David Niose, the legal director of the American Humanist Association, an atheist group, among other things. In my discussion with him, and I do appreciate them coming on air, he coming on air to represent their perspective. Lines are open. What do you all think about what David said? 269-441-9595. You listen to Live with Renk. We'll be right back after this.
No saints, sure as hell ain't no savior. Every other Christmas I would practice good behavior. That was then, this is now. Don't ask me to be Mr. Clean, baby, I don't know how. The wasted words already been heard. The wasted words will never be heard. Go on home, baby, watch it on TV.
You listen to Live with Renk, and I appreciate that. 269-441-9595. If you have a thought, one line is open. Love to hear from you. I just ended my interview with David Niose, the legal director of the American Humanist Association, an atheist group that my basic question was, where in the Constitution does it say there has to be a wall between wall of separation between church and state? And what I heard, I think, from him was he stipulated that's true, but then he started talking about the Establishment Clause. What are your thoughts? 269-441-9595. Let's go to Nashville, Michigan, and Scott. Scott, you're on.
Thank you, Renk. Hey, Renk, that was probably the best interview I've heard in a long time. Thank you for the give and take that you just had.
Well, I appreciate that, Scott. I was really trying to balance it as best I could.
Okay,
and,
well, I have criticized you in the past for not allowing people to talk enough, and you did a fantastic job. My point, I guess, on this, and you had some great points coming back at him with the how does he interpret, how does he put his views into us and not say the same thing that he's, inflicting his views on us. That was great. My point, though, on the 10th Amendment is that, Maryland, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, all of these states initially had their own religions. And it was not outlawed by the federal government. You could still be a state that had your own religion. It's not, the problem is when the federal government, it comes back to the same thing that you and I, we've all been talking about for many years. When the federal government imposes its will on others, it also imposes its negative will on others, which is you cannot do these things. Obama talks about the Constitution being, negative laws, etc. It's the same thing, though, when it comes to religion. It's the exact opposite. You can't do these things. And nowhere as you said many times in that interview, nowhere in the Constitution does it outlaw religion. and
Right,
I
and that's
appreciated your views.
And that's really what I said I would ask back when I was talking about these issues individually when they came up, because and I to be honest did not hear a good answer to that.
I never did either, and I completely agreed. You kept coming after him, and he could never give you a good answer as to why it can be. And when 97% of the, whatever it is, 90 to 96%, I think is the number, anyway, that do have belief in a God of some sort, have these beliefs, why on earth is that overridden by the 5 to 10% that don't?
Yeah. All right, Scott, thanks for your thoughts. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you, Renk. Take care.
You too. Take it easy. Line just opened up, 269-441-9595. What are your thoughts of the interview I just had, or what would you have asked him that maybe I did not? Let's go ahead. Battle Creek and Jake. Jake, you're on.
That was a great interview, Renk.
Thank you.
A couple of things I wanted to talk about was, the gentleman, David, he admitted that atheism was a religion, and he admitted that his religion was humanism. And under that context of his own words, he wants his religion over other people's religions.
You heard that he admitted? There's a lot going on when I'm interviewing like this. I don't know if I could say...
He said he wanted to advocate for religious, inequalities or whatever because children in school, and with the whole thing, of someone saying God bless America in school, a child praying in school, if that child wants to exercise their right, First Amendment right, what right does this other guy have saying, no, you can't do that because my religion, humanism, because in humanism, their God is themselves.
Well, they say, what is humanism? And humanism is a worldview which says the reason and science are the best ways to understand the world around us, and that the dignity and compassion should be the basis for how to act towards someone else. But that's exactly what most religions talk about, dignity and compassion for other people. So I would think that humanists would be in cahoots with these other religions, and it's fine if you don't want to believe that there is a God or a higher power, and I'm okay with that. In fact, if you remember, he didn't answer the question about what about if a child says God bless not on the PA in a school? He didn't answer that question.
Right.
And now, to be fair, I don't know. I was trying to let him talk a lot. I really was, but I also had a lot of questions I wanted to get in. And to be fair, I don't know if he heard that. Well, actually, he heard it, but if he chose to move on and finish his answer and not answer that, because we forget, I do a lot. I don't know, but...
Yeah, I mean, the Supreme Court already ruled atheism is a religion.
All right. Well, I appreciate... Did you learn something, Jake, from that?
Yeah, I did. I I learned something, and I also feel like my some of my original thoughts were just validated with how atheists think.
Okay, Jake, thanks a lot for calling in. 269-441-9595. If you have a thought, please call in. I'd love to hear from you. And again, I want to make it, and it's kind of funny because I was ready for the whole Thomas Jefferson letter. I had found an article from last year in the Christian Post, but it spoke about that letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote. And, a good point being that they said that's a letter that is not law. And again, what Jefferson said in his notes to the state of Virginia is, quote, and can the liberties of a nation be thought secure if we've lost the only firm basis, a conviction in the minds of the people that these liberties are the gift of God, that they are not to be violated, but with his wrath. And I don't believe that we should be forcing anybody's religion on anybody. I don't want children in schools being forced to go to religious classes. But David never answered the question, too, about why I could hear from an atheist and I'm not crushed. It doesn't crush my thoughts. Why can't an atheist hear God bless America, and why are they so offended by that? Didn't get an answer from that either. But I do appreciate David for coming on and giving us his perspective. You're listening to Live with Renk. What's your perspective? We'll be right back. WBCK time, 10:57.